Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Commercial Real Estate Secrets. I'm your host, Austin Hare, and our guest today is Dr. Gupta. She's the founder of Gupta Psychiatry. It's located in Raleigh, North Carolina, and they have been established since 2010. So over a decade's worth of experience owning their own practice. And it's a pleasure to have you on the show today, Dr. Gupta. How's it going?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I'm kind of excited to do something outside of the medical space and kind of learn and kind of tell you my story. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we got connected through your husband, Dr. Taryn, who's a dentist, and you guys share some real estate together for both your practices. So that's really cool. And so he was telling me about you, and I thought, you know what, that would be awesome. We gotta get her on the show. So yeah, what's your story? Like, how did you decide that you were going to go down, the road that led to being a psychologist and having your own practice and stuff like that? Like, what was life like for you when you were younger as a kid?
So I grew up in South Florida. My
Nice.
parents were both doctors. One was a psychiatrist and one was a gastroenterologist. And if you know anything about Indian people, we're kind of bred to be either doctors, engineers, dentists. We have to have some kind of path. And so when it came to my life, because I grew up with doctors and all my family are doctors, I was bred to be a doctor. So I have no choice in the matter. I mean, but I didn't know any different either. It was all I knew. So I thought, of course, I'm going to be a doctor. So I started medical school in South Florida. And I grew up kind of going with my mom to the hospital, my dad to the hospital, and watch what they do. But I always felt like I was going to do what my dad did, which is more procedures and, GI bleeders and whatnot. But actually, when I went to medical school, I ended up falling in love with psychiatry because psychiatry, it's a new day every day. You do not know what you're going to get. And also you have to have some empathy in psychiatry, and not everyone has that for mental health. And so I realized that this is probably what I should be doing. So I started the residency and I ended up moving to, after medical school, I ended up moving to North Carolina because I got married. And he was in North Carolina and he had already started his practice. At that point, he was renting kind of an office, and he was young. We were both like 23 and 25. So we're young.
Nice.
I moved to, So, we didn't want to commit to anything yet, but we were just getting our feet wet. I was in residency in Wake Forest, so I would drive an hour and a half each way. So before we wanted to buy anything, we kind of wanted to see where we were going to live. So he opened his practice, and then I was doing my training. And then once my training was over, we wanted to find a building. So that's about when we bought our building that we're currently in. And it was a very hard decision being two younger, business. I mean, in medical school and dental school, they don't teach you any business. So I know we had talked about that, we're not educated in business yet. I mean, doctors and dentists do pretty well in money, right? But they're very poor money managers. And even now, I feel like I have so much to learn, and I think when it comes to making money, we're probably good at it. But do we know how to invest it? Do we know how to grow it even, So that's, I think, a constant learning thing for us because we never learned it in school. And I do think that's something that's lacking. So interesting. Our parents, though, they have experience. And so we both learned from our parents. My husband's family is into real estate. They build hotels and motels and gas stations and laundromats. And so they've been in this kind of space for a while. So he understood it from that spot. So it was kind of like an inherent education. And then on my side, same thing, my father, but I learned from my father's mistakes as well. So my father rented for like 30 years, and he regrets it every single day. And it's because, just kind of threw money away when he saw his friends buying a place, but he was just comfortable. So he never pushed it. And so we learned from their mistakes, but my dad was a doctor. So doctors, like I said, they don't think like businessmen do. So in that way, I don't know if anyone's ever read the Rich Dad, Poor Dad mentality.
Oh, yeah. One of my very influential books.
Yeah, I mean, I love that book. And actually, because I'm in my own journey of how to invest and how to, like, what do I do next? What is the best way to invest this money I'm making, right? So I read Rich Dad and Poor Dad, and the whole thing is, I think my dad, even though he made a lot of money, he was more, it was the rich dad, the one that went to school. Which one was the
No,
rich
the poor
dad?
dad.
Dad's
Yeah, the poor dad went to school and he was like very accredited in his, his
Mhm.
job and his career. He was actually a teacher, like a professor at a university. And
And
the
then
rich
the
dad
rich dad.
was the one who like learned everything on the streets, so to speak.
And so that's what happened here too. My father-in-law is a dentist, but he never practiced in the United States. And he was more of the rich dad. I mean, as you look over time, my father may have looked like the rich dad because he was, he spent money, had nice cars, had nice houses, right? And he was a physician, so he had that. But my father-in-law, he had property after property after property that now makes him money. He gets to sit at home. So it's interesting that you see the two differences. I mean, they both did well. It's just a different type. We as doctors just bust our butt all day long, and this is like money just coming to you, mailbox money, you could call it, right? So
Yeah.
anyways, I mean, ultimately, I think that's what we're all looking for, is to be able to retire and be comfortable, right? So anyways, we ended up buying this building. It was a real stretch for us. My mother and father were like, you should do it. Let's do it, just commit. And so we did it. And this building, it's very interesting. So I watched my parents and they both were in the same building. So we decided, we would like that too, because it just makes it easier, less overhead, whatnot. So I moved in here and I moved upstairs into like an older area, and my husband had the downstairs dental area, and then we had a renter at that point. But once their lease was up, we were planning on them moving out, and then we kind of renovated and I moved into a bigger space. And since then I've been growing, and now my husband's growing, and his teaching center, we bought another property and he's moving it there, and I'm taking over the rest of the building. So it's very interesting. We've kind of grown into this building and almost overgrown the building. So now we're just
It's a good problem to have.
growing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, back when you'd moved up to North Carolina, you got married, you said you were still in medical school, or when you graduated, like, did you immediately start working for yourself, or were you like an associate somewhere? What was that like?
So when you graduate medical school, you do 4 years. Well, depending on what field you go into, you do residency, which is 4 years, and you're like almost like an intern type person. You work under a full-fledged doctor. So you have to finish this training to be specialized in whatever specialty you are. So I did that for 4 years. Then I came back to Raleigh, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I did some work at different hospitals, and I worked at different offices. But I always knew that I was going to open my own business, but I wanted to get my feet wet, feel comfortable being on my own. So then I opened this smaller office, and I worked like crazy because I don't like to say no to people. So I would just bounce from room to room. But eventually I hired people. And so now it's gotten to a point where in 10 years, we have 23 employees. And
Nice.
we have different aspects of that's not just me. I have individual therapy. So I do the medication management. Then I have therapists who do the therapy. And then we have an intensive outpatient program and like a substance abuse program where people come here every day and they get group therapy, individual therapy, medication management, withdrawal management, and to keep them off drugs and alcohol.
Okay. So that's interesting because I didn't know that. So essentially, you guys are doing outpatient stuff, you're doing prescription. And so is it like, in order to be a psychologist, do you have to go through the full like 7-year program of medical school?
So that's the thing. Most people think psychologists and psychiatrists are the same thing, and they're not. So psychologist is a PsyD or PhD in psychology. And then a psychiatrist went to medical school and chose to be in a specialty which deals with the medical disorders that relate to the brain.
Oh, interesting.
So we're actually boarded. Yeah. And so we're boarded in both psychiatry and neurology. So our board looks like psychiatry and neurology. But
so
typically
psychiatry is kind of like several levels deeper than psychology.
It's just different. So psychology would be more therapy. It would be more, techniques and stuff you can use. Some states allow them to prescribe medication if they take further training, but most states and most psychologists aren't going into it for that. So they do more testing, like a battery of tests to kind of figure out where your brain is. We do more of the medical side. So if you came into my office and you had depression, I wouldn't just automatically put you on SSRI or an antidepressant. I would look at you and say, okay, I need to get some blood work. Let's see, when's the last time you were checked for anemia or thyroid disorders or B12 level, vitamin D. So I kind of look at it as a holistic kind of view of the person before I just label them as depressed, you know?
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. And I'm sure that's like the best way to look at it anyways, like holistic,
Yeah.
the holistic view. Like, sounds like you're reluctant to just prescribe them medication, which I'm sure is helpful, because for me, like being into health and fitness, like the first approach is always like making sure that you are eating right and that you're active and that you're healthy.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, because my wife is actually PA, a lot of times, you know, the medical practice, the medical industry gets a bad name. Well, yeah, it gets a bad name because, you know, they think, oh, you're just slapping labels on them and giving them pills and stuff like that. And it's like, well, no, medical industry is really trying to do things the right way. It's the patients that don't want to put in the exercise or the hard work or eating right, all these types of things, right? So as a result, sometimes you have to give them a prescription because that's the only alternative now.
Well, also, I think people want a fast result, right? And a fast result to them is give me a pill and I'll fix it. But that's creating a problem in our country and the world. And so my theory is a little different. People come to me on all kinds of things, and I try to reduce their medications and see if there might be side effects to these medications that are causing your issues. I also look at nutrition. I have nutraceuticals. I do like vitamins and that type of stuff. So like I do other things to kind of help people outside of medications, like just normal, the medications you think of. We also have treatments here we have something, we're getting ready to get the TMS machine, which is transmagnetic stimulation for depression and OCD. We also do something called Spravato, which is like ketamine treatment for depression. So, I mean, I try to do everything. I try to like, and we have the reason I started with therapists in the office is because it makes sense to have a holistic approach here. So you're not just giving out meds, but there's some other aspect to it. So we talk about mindfulness and CBT and changing your way of thinking and those kind of things.
Yeah, I like that. And so most of your patients, are they coming from referrals or are they driving by? Like, how do you get most people to come in?
So we picked this location because it was right on the street, on a major intersection, and we have a sign. It's funny, my husband, you know, he was here first. I mean, in that we bought the building together, but he was here first, and you know, he has a little bit bigger ego than I do, and so
common among us men.
He took the bigger sign, and my sign's like really small. So so that's kind of something that everyone likes to point out, you know, even my patients. So like, when are you getting a new sign, you know? But anyways, it's right on the street. And so, but I tend to be more referral based, and that's how I kind of, so a lot of psychiatrists will be, you know, you can go directly to them. And I did that too. I mean, you can come to me, I advertise in different places, but the main way I get patients is through referrals. So I go and market to my referrals. I go and have lunches with them, you know, all of that stuff.
Okay. Yeah, cool. So yeah, it's good. It sounds like you guys got a good location. A lot of what we coach is, you know, finding a good location. And it's not like every single industry or every single niche within industries have to have like a prominent retail location, because there's, you know, there's always exceptions to the rule. But in general, like the more street visibility you have, the more retail kind of location you have, the better you can, you know, maximize your business, maximize your patient flow. Because especially in these days, like the digital ad platforms they are becoming more and more popular, right? But they're a bidding platform, and so the price is only going to go up. And so, you know, if you have a really good location, that essentially cuts into that marketing budget, right? Because people are seeing you as they drive by. And so it's good that it sounds like you guys put a lot of effort into selecting this site, and it sounds like it's paying off now. Like, I mean, are you happy with the location that you guys selected?
Oh, we're really happy. And if we could buy the 2 buildings next to us, we would too, you know, and we try. So that's the thing. I think that's the thing. We are growing, and I think it has the big the location is a huge part of it. You know, being on a main road where people know where you are. So even if they pass by you all the time, they don't know. But if you say, "Hey, we're across from the McDonald's," they say, "Oh yeah, I pass by that all the time." You know, so to be able to say, you know, it's kind of like, just knowing like an intersection, most people in Raleigh know this place. So it makes it really nice and easy.
Yeah.
I do. And I feel like over here, commercial real estate, I mean, it's still kind of doing really well because people are moving here from all kinds of places.
Yeah.
I know with this whole pandemic, people say, oh gosh, there's going to be so many openings, but I really am not finding them. You know what I mean? It's
Well,
pretty busy here.
yeah, it's very situation dependent, right? And so like you got places like New York that are just really locked down,
I
there's
know.
high taxes. You got places like California really locked down, really high taxes. When you get those two combinations together, people are moving out in droves. And so what's happening is, yeah, even though parts of the economy have been severely hurt, like there's enough people moving into the economies that have stayed open, that it's really offsetting any of that imprints that or any of that negative effects that we thought we were going to feel from COVID. So it's been really interesting. Like the way it all shakes out was not how I would have predicted personally, but yeah, as a result, like people are wanting aggressive cap rates. Like they're wanting to sell their buildings for good prices. There's a lot of them that aren't really necessarily hurting as much as we thought in these open states. And especially with all of the money that's being printed and handed out and the inflation that we're seeing, there's a lot of cash on the sidelines looking for places to invest it and get a return. And so that's causing inflation. You know what I mean? That's driving the price up, and real estate is getting affected a lot.
After kind of like now we're 10 years and I'm 10 years into my practice, it's doing well. I mean, you start getting money and you're like, what do I do with this? Like, do I want to put in the stock market? Do I want to buy more property? And so my thing is, I believe in property. Everyone's different, and I think you could diversify and do different things, but property, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I own something maybe, and I can like rent it out and whatnot. So I bought some beach houses, and I did it without my husband. I just,
Nice.
I don't even buy a car without my husband, but cause I, just trust him. But this particular time I went to visit the beach, and my friend had a beach house, and she's like, we rent it, we make money. Like, we have this property, it's right on the water. You should get one. So I went with a realtor and I found one, and I like lowballed it, and I bought one. Nice. On the water facing the ocean. And it has been one of the best purchases we've ever made.
That's
and
awesome.
Then we bought
what year did you buy
one.
it?
I bought it in maybe 5 years ago. And then I bought another one, another one a year or two after that, because then I became friends with this realtor, so then he was able to kind of tell me, hey, there's this one coming up. Are you interested? Or this one is, this lady's leaving or whatever. So I bought another one, and then I would rent them, and then I fixed them up, and I basically flipped one of them, and my other one I'm not flipping. And actually, if you were to go into Carolina Beach, is where our house is, there's only one house for sale right now.
Wow.
And that's wild, right? So like people are coming from New York and up north, and they're just buying them sight unseen, and they're spending their kind of money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, I mean, I doubled my money on one and rented it out while I was waiting, and then this one, I could double my money on too, but I'm not selling it because there's nowhere to go.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so it still, creates a problem. It's a good problem, but yeah, there's no discounts, there's no deals right now. Right. And you can spend a lot of time there. I know a lot of people that are just waiting on the sidelines for the next reset. Right. And the problem is, like, you can be waiting a really, really long time. Like, I know people that have been waiting since 2016, 2015. Right. And if you're just waiting to time the market, I mean, nobody can time the market perfectly. I'm sure we will have another reset at some point, but who would have guessed that COVID would have made the real estate market stronger in the South?
I know.
You know what I mean? In places like Texas,
it's wild.
North and South Carolina.
I mean, even if I sold my property right now, I don't know what I would buy, right? Because you wouldn't necessarily be able to buy something. And capital gains, right? So like that, I'm learning as I do. And that one house, I doubled my money, but then I had to figure out, what am I going to do with this money, right? So, and I have to use the whole amount, which I thought it was just the profits. You learn as you do. And then we actually bought my husband's new building with that money. And, I mean, I'm trying to read and learn about it, because obviously we don't learn about it. So shows like yours are really valuable,
Yeah. The thing, and I invest a lot in the stock market as well, but I do obviously love real estate, right? That's the whole theme of the show. And so but we do a lot of commercial, but like personally on my personal real estate side, I have a couple Airbnbs as well. And the thing that I like about
especially in Orlando.
Yeah, it's going great. But the thing I like about just residential real estate in general and like Airbnbs, it does take up a lot of time. That's the negative. But the positive
Mhm.
is the fact that you have an asset that's producing you income every month, and you can
Right.
leverage that asset to like a pretty good extent, right? And what I mean by that is like, if the house is a $400,000 house, you don't need that whole 400,000. You can put 10% down, right? And over time,
Mhm.
as you grow, as the value of the house grows, you you pay down that debt, obviously. And some people have a pipe dream of like, hey, I want to own all my houses debt free, and I want to just collect the rent every single month. And I get that. There's a certain security level to that, right? That's a very safe way to do it, and it is a smart way to do it. But you can also still be somewhat, you can be better financially set while taking on more risk by refinancing those properties that you own as they increase in value, right? So as your properties increase in value, you don't have to sell them. You can
No.
refinance them, and now your mortgage payment will go up a little bit, right? And you're going to extend it for another 30 years, but you get the benefit of all that capital up front, right? Like the entire
Mhm.
equity that you've built up. That's really valuable. And as a mortgage, you're only paying 3 to 4% annually. I
Yeah.
mean, that's super cheap, right? Like this is super, super cheap money. And so there's so many things that you can do with that money that make you way more than 3 to 4%. Like for instance, if you bought another property, right? Like in your case, it sounds like you guys are doing very well renting it out. You don't have to sell this property in order to refinance, get some more capital, put that into a new property, and then you can continue that cycle, right? It's a method
Yeah.
that I heard about on Bigger Pockets. They call it the Burr method. It's like,
Oh, the Burr method. Yeah.
yeah. So essentially, like, you're never selling the properties, but you're always refinancing them, getting your money back, and you continue to grow and scale that way. So, the
Yeah.
downfall, of course, of
That with the,
residential
yeah.
is well, sorry, what was that?
I could do with that with the beach house.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and then with residential, one of the downfalls is that like it is a little bit more to manage, per location, right? Like they are just like, it does require usually somebody like either the owner or property manager to be on the phone, calling people, fixing stuff. And the scalability, like you scale through the number of units, not through the size of the building. So it's like, if you can get a really expensive commercial real estate building, you can scale the amount of the rent proportionately, where it's like,
Right.
you got $100,000 house that could pay you 10 grand a year in rent. $1 million house probably isn't going to pay you $100,000 a year in rent. Yeah. So
Well,
there's pros and cons to both.
no, like if I sold my house and bought it in a nicer area, let's say, I don't get any more rent for it. The rent stays
Right.
the same. So I'm
Right.
like, we're good. We'll stay here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, residential, like renting and residential real estate there's definitely a cap to the amount of money that you can spend and pay for it in order for it to make sense.
Mhm.
But yeah, so in terms of the practice, sounds like you guys have been growing awesome. Like in dentistry, the last statistic I heard, there's about 90 to 100,000 locations in the U.S. Do you have any idea for in psychiatry? Like I know you are.
I don't think that's anywhere close to that. I think there's a real need for mental health centers. There's a
Mhm.
real need for psychiatrists. And so I'm a psychiatrist who takes insurance, which is like a small breed,
Oh yeah.
in my area, there's probably, I mean, with COVID, I was the only one who was open during the whole time.
Wow.
A lot of people shut down or they only did telemedicine. But I really believe in that touch feel. Like telemedicine's great, but then at the same time, some of these people need to come in. So I stayed open. There's hospitals in the area, a couple of them. There's not tons of them. And this is a pretty big area. And this is like got 3 universities right here. But we've got like practices that don't take any insurance. So it's very like, they don't want to deal with that. So there's smaller practices. They can only see so many people. And then there's this huge practice in our town that's kind of growing and has like 40 locations, but then you're a number, right? So the quality of care you get different places is going to be different, and so my whole thought was, I want to take insurance. I want to see people like you and I who want to use their benefits. And so I try to treat people with respect. I put a lot of thought into how the practice needs to look. I wanted it to look more like a calm place. When you go to these psychiatric facilities or offices, they're very drab, they're very sad, no one spends any money in them, right? But I did the opposite. I put beautiful floors, I put
That's
chandeliers.
cool.
I wanted it to look like you're going to the spa, but you're going to the spa for your mind, but yet still take insurance because there's nothing wrong in that.
Yeah, no, I like that. So is there like with psychiatric facilities, like they kind of have this association with them, where you think of like the movies where they're like these white walls and these white floors, and it's like people are in like straitjackets and stuff like that. And obviously that's not at all the case. It's just Hollywood probably, or there probably are some locations like that.
Some locations are like that. They're trying to get better, but they still are very like, they have to be very plain in that, or like safe. So things have to be locked down, like a chair, things like that, because they don't want people throwing chairs. So there's a safety component to it. But I think even like things like playing music, you know, they don't play music. It's like a stark environment. They may have a TV on and 8 people are watching it. You know, it's just like, it is similar somewhat to the movies. I mean, but they're trying to make it more, but then you go outside, they have a basketball court, but then there's fired fence with like that wire all around it, you know, so you can't get out. So it looks like a prison, you know? Yeah, it's a little different, you know?
Yeah, no, that's cool. And how many square footage is your facility?
I think it's 15,000, wow. But I think I have more. I used to have like 3,500 of it. Now I have like, I would say 10,000 of it. So I'm growing it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, more than half. And so, have you been hiring other psychiatrists as well to work underneath you, or do you kind of serve as the one with the license who can authorize the prescriptions and stuff like that?
So I'm the only psychiatrist here. I have 2 PAs, 3 nurse practitioners, and I have 6 therapists, and I have a team of, you know, administrative team.
Okay,
it's a lot of and we're continuing to grow.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you guys are doing a lot of things right at the rate that you're growing. So at this stage, you want to take down a bigger building that has more square foot, so you can continue to grow, continue to hire more PAs and therapists as well.
So it makes me a little anxious because I like the personalized aspect. As a businesswoman, yes, that would be ideal to keep going, right? But as a I don't know, I'm a businesswoman, but I'm also like I want to help people. So I don't want to be as big as this other company in town that has 40 locations. I could be, I mean, easily I could do it. But I don't want to do that because that's not the type of medicine I want to practice. I really want to feel like people feel comfortable when they come here, and I want my culture to continue. So what I've decided is I'm going to focus on these other things that I do, like the TMS, the Spravato, which is the ketamine, and then the substance use, because we have everyone will say it. We have a real issue with substance use right now in this country, but with the COVID, it's gotten a lot worse. And it's not just heroin or opiates. It's also alcohol, you know, and it becomes 1 glass of wine becomes 2 glasses of wine becomes 3, because in the evening you need to take the edge off. Well, then you're self-medicating, right? So it's becoming more and more of a problem. And then during COVID, people started drinking in the day because they're at home, you know, so it's become a problem where my program. So before COVID, there was maybe 15 people in the program. Now there's 40 something, you know, and that's a huge growth. But more than the growth of that, I mean, we can keep going. And so I love what we do. And I think we do it with heart. So I think we're going to continue to grow. I would like to eventually do a residential center. So that's kind of where I feel like I'm going to grow.
Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting that you talk about, you have some statistics behind the negative effects of the lockdowns and COVID, because it just felt like we never heard the other side, right? We never heard the consequences, because like lockdowns, the benefit of lockdowns is that it helps stop the spread of COVID, right? That's a good thing. However, there's a cost to that, right? Like no one ever talked about the cost of the lockdowns, because that was one of the things we said straight away. You know, me and my peer group was like, what about alcoholism? What about abusive parents? What about all those
really
things?
Bad.
It's like, and it was just so one-sided. Dialogue was so one-sided, you know?
Oh yeah, it was very one-sided. I still get really upset when they talk about maybe going into another lockdown, or I think people are starting to break, you know? So you thought it was a problem, but now people are starting to break mentally. You know, I have more people coming in with anxiety, insomnia, like older geriatric population are really struggling with being alone, you know? So it's like risk benefits. What are we doing? You know, and I believe in coronavirus. I'm not one of those non-believers. I just feel like yeah, I just feel like you have to risk benefit analysis,
Yes.
everything. And right now, our families, our friends, they're struggling, and like my children are struggling. My daughter was put on an antidepressant because
Well,
this COVID was hard for her, right? And so, and there's nothing like bad about that, but I wouldn't have necessarily done that, but I saw the struggles. Like, I don't know, this isolation is really tough.
yeah. Yeah. I agree. And it's interesting talking to a psychiatrist, right? Like you actually have those numbers and statistics because we talk about it. It's like, well, I think that alcoholism would go up. I would
Yeah.
think that substance abuse would go up, but it's like, there's no facts anywhere about that, right? Like, it's not like they're printing it because that goes against the common narrative, which is that like, you have to stop COVID at all costs, even if it costs other lives. Like, there's just
Yeah.
no dialogue or there's no reason, right? There's no reason there. There's not a lot of logic there. And
I
so,
feel, yeah, no, I feel like they're just pushing one agenda, but they're not looking at the repercussions of all this. And they're
right.
coming. I promise you, they're not going anywhere. Like, we are going to have to deal with this for years. Like the
Yeah,
repercussions.
because it's just, it's self-preservation for a lot of the politicians, a lot of the media. Like, media focuses in on it, and it's like, you're not, as a politician, you're not judged based on how many people die from suicide or car wrecks or substance abuse,
No.
but you are judged if how many people are died on COVID, right? And that's one-sided because that's not the whole picture. And so I am glad that it seems like the lockdowns are pretty much behind us. Most people are getting vaccinated and feeling more comfortable and going out and stuff like that. But again, like we live in the South. I'm in Florida, you're in North Carolina, and we're just lucky. I mean, there's no way you
Yeah,
could
we
predict
are
it.
lucky.
Like, we just got really
And
lucky.
honestly, Florida really didn't have bad outcomes.
Yeah,
And people say what they want to say, but Florida actually didn't have that bad outcomes.
I think it was
So
equivalent to California, who is still locked down today,
I think it actually might be below California.
which
I
is
mean,
crazy.
really, and yeah, and New York, they had more deaths in the elderly population, and that Florida has many more elderly people.
Right. Right. Yeah, I remember back when this happened, March, April of last year, I was thinking like, okay, like here's another opportunity. There's they're locking down. It's gonna cause the economy to really have a correction. We're gonna scoop up some real estate at really cheap prices. We're
I
taking
go to
2008 all over again. But it just never happened, like the demand stayed there. And so now we've got a case with the opposite problem, which is we have inflation. And so now it's like,
yeah,
okay, how am I,
yeah,
yeah, where am I gonna put my money now that's gonna be
I
inflation proof?
know.
And real estate is a really great asset, even though you might have to overpay for it a little bit right now. In my opinion, it is overpaying for it,
Yeah.
but it's going to continue to increase because, like, as we see inflation, the value of assets goes up, right? People who own assets,
No, it's not. Yeah, and that's my biggest fear is that now I have this money in the bank, I got to do something with it.
yeah,
Like I got to buy property or stocks, but I mean, it's scary to do stocks too. Like, so it's like, which one do you pick?
yeah. I mean, yeah. Personally, I think I think the market. I think that was our correction, right? I think we saw that was the
Mhm.
kind of like the gatekeeper. I don't think there was enough industries. Like there were several industries in hospitality, anything where people are close together. Those were all negatively affected. But
Yeah.
that was only a percentage of the economy, right? I think the economy, the market will continue to go up personally. So, I could be wrong, right? I could lose a lot of money and look like an idiot. But personally, like I'm pretty invested in the market. I'm pretty
I
invested
mean,
in
I think
index
you
funds.
know the environment. I think you know your business, so you probably know what you're talking about.
Yeah, when we look, because usually and during recessions, the market gets hit the fastest because it's liquid. So you see that first. Second thing that gets hit is residential real estate. And the last thing is commercial real estate. Like that's the last thing to shake out because it takes a long time for all these businesses to exhaust all
Mhm.
their resources before they actually file bankruptcy
Yeah.
or close the location or whatever. And a year later, we're still seeing the real estate market like really strong. And that's not to say that that'll last forever. But a lot of the stuff that my original hypothesis is proved to be wrong. And there is a demand for real estate. I
Huge.
mean, it's very centrally, location
Mhm.
based, but personally, like I think it's a good investment long term. Like I don't see it going anywhere, even if you have to pay a little bit above what
It's
you
okay.
like to pay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna, inflation is gonna keep happening. I think they're gonna continue to print money. Whether or not
Money.
you agree with that, we don't control it, right? Like I don't personally agree with it, but we got to accept it.
No,
There's a saying, "Don't fight the Fed," right?
I
And so
know.
if they're gonna keep doing it, then having debt on an appreciating asset is actually a really good thing, because that asset is going to go up in value. Your debt is going to be worth less and less over time as
Mhm.
inflation happens.
I know. It just, yeah. I mean, I think that's what. So I'm looking. I look every day for real estate. That's like my part-time hobby here,
Nice.
and I'm always looking. But I mean, really, supply is, you know.
Yeah. Supply is an issue. And when you say you're looking for more residential investments on the beach, or you're looking
No,
for to expand your office?
I'm looking for commercial, not just for my office, but just to buy and rent out even.
Hmm.
I'm looking for anything really, because I
And
know that that's where I want to put my money, you know? So I was telling my husband, like, all these movie theaters have shut down. We should look at their, their locations and see if they're selling,
yeah,
because I feel like you could do something with that, you know? And I was telling my husband, you teach, so those could be like, it could be like a school in a way, or, you can do stuff with things. You just have to kind of think outside the box.
yeah, no, that's smart. I think that's a really smart way to approach it. Just be opportunistic about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, for everybody listening and they like what you are saying, they like what you're doing, they want to maybe get in touch or come see you if they're local in the area. I mean, what's a good place to reach out and get connected?
So my website is guptapsychiatry.com, and we have blogs on there. We have information on there. If you want to come see me in my office, the information's on there. You can go to, once again, guptapsychiatry.com. And we're in Raleigh. But if you have questions, you can also send me emails through that website. So that would be good. If anyone has any questions or needs a lead to a different place or a different town, I can find them some help. So if anyone needs help, call us.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I love what you do. I love what you stand for. I like that you take a holistic approach and try and do it the healthy way first. I'm totally in line with that. And so I wrote down the website here, guptapsychiatry.com. That's in the show notes. For everybody listening, they'll be able to click and find out more information.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, you're welcome. Yeah. It was a pleasure having you on the show. And hopefully I'll get to connect with you and your husband more in the future. Maybe we'll even run into you in an in-person event sometime.
That would be awesome.